This episode is sponsored by Kendo UI. Kendo UI allows you to build better apps faster. They have a comprehensive library ranging from data grids and charts to buttons and sliders. Plus, you can use their components as plain JavaScript as well as in Angular, React, and Vue. They have a large collection of customizable popular themes like Bootstrap and Material. Go check them out at javascriptjabber.com/KendoUI. Hey everybody, and we are live at Microsoft Build, and I'm talking to David Cramer from Sentry. David, do you want to say hi?
How's it going, everybody? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, do you want to just give a brief introduction, who you are, what you do?
Yeah, I'm the founder CEO of a company and product called Sentry. I actually am a software engineer by trade, started the project about a decade ago. We're like a big open source application monitoring tool.
Right.
At a high level. Happy to go deeper if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
The way we sort of think about it is, back in the day when I got so I'm like a self-taught engineer. When I got my start, I did it like PHP. And the way PHP worked, at least in my world, was you would log into a server, like SSH into a server. You would copy paste like a PHP file into a new PHP file, and you'd go edit it on the server.
Right.
And then you load it to see if it was broken or not. You got like instant feedback. It's a very quick development cycle.
I'll admit that I've debugged that way a few times.
Yeah. It's a lot harder today. So we sort of started Sentry a long time ago, specifically because there were customers telling us that things were broken, and we might have had the information in logs somewhere, but it was really hard to find the right information. And it was always like, it wasn't quite what you needed. Like the simple analogy was like, hey, this is broken for me, and it's like, what browser are you using? I don't know anything about what's going on, right? And you can imagine those days where you spend hours and hours debugging an issue, and that's after you find out about it. So ours was like really like let's find out about things right away, and then sort of build like almost like a debugger, but for production, to where we actually have all the answers and just kind of like get through it.
Right.
But so we've been doing that quite a while. The focus has really been like on a workflow. So part of the reason we're here at Build is we've been working closely with like the Visual Studio Team Services group. And what we sort of envision is taking like this classic APM analytics approach, which is the best way to describe it is dashboards. So if you're looking for something to do, you can go look at one of these dashboards.
Right.
They'll give you a lot of things to work on, but they're not really going to hone in on like, what do you need to do right now? Like you're doing sprint planning or whatever. And ideally what happens is you go through like feature development. When you're done with the feature development, like you can forget about it, but that's not actually how it goes down. So what our effective goal is like, okay, you've shipped something, whether it's like partially done or you think it's done, there's an issue with it.
Right.
Primarily we focus on errors today, just because those are super relevant. There's an error that happens. We're in your inbox, specifically your inbox, because you wrote the code. We associate it to like the commit that we think is responsible.
Okay.
So we're in your inbox because of that. We give you this huge amount of debug information, and then we tie in with like your workflow tooling. So for example, you get alerted just like a monitoring tool, and then you sort of decide how to triage it. So one form of triage might be like, I don't care about this, just ignore it, right? Another form is like, okay, like I need to like load this up in like as a work item in team services. So we triage that over for you, and then it goes through kind of like a standard workflow. So you're going to go through like code review, everything else. And one of the really clever things we did early on was when you close a ticket in VSCS, like it's sort of up to you to manage that life cycle. When you close a ticket, effectively an issue in Sentry, we actually are aware if it's really closed or not. So you say you fix this bug, we'll tell you if you fix this bug. And that's like a really like important, interesting concept. Because at the end of the day, it's like an efficiency tool. Hypothetically, you can get all the same data with logs and other metrics. But it's really like cutting that down. Like our marketing spiel on it is like, we can turn like this resolution cycle from 5 hours to 5 minutes. And to be honest, 5 hours is kind of generous. It's usually more like 5 days. But yeah, so that's like the high level.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's, I've used a number of tools that do the error reporting, and, so something comes in and then they'll connect to, GitHub or GitLab, or they'll connect to Slack or something like that and say, hey, this error occurred. They'll tell me you've got a zillion of these, or, just deployed. It's like, okay, here are the 3 times it's happened so far, and that kind of a thing. And it's, as far as using a tool like this, it makes a lot of sense just from the standpoint of it automates that process and makes it so that I don't have to spend a ton of time going and figuring out what's going on. You capture all of the context, and then you give me enough information to go and fix it.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of workflow management, and I've been pushing a lot of people to look at, as much as they can, automating things and understanding the workflows just to get more things done. And part of it's because I'm a developer. I don't want to go dig through the logs. I mean, my grep skills are crappy. And the other thing is that, I just want to build the next feature. I want to be the hero.
Yeah.
And so, if you can get it out of the way so that it's, okay, I fixed the bug and now I'm on to the next thing. I mean, you're my friend.
Yeah, I remember early on. So I've been building Sentry. Like, it's been open source the whole time. It wasn't like a business or anything for a long time, right? So a lot of time it's just like I'm doing it as like a spare time hobby. Just really liked it, right? And then there was a period of time where I actually ran the business while I was working at another company.
Right.
And right after that, I immediately switched to like business mode. Like, I quit my job. We started building the company like for real. And I'm like, okay, I need to like go convince customers to pay us money, right?
Right.
And I remember like I have this like very vivid memory of talking with a big organization, and I'm like, okay, like I want you to like use Sentry and pay for Sentry. And this is like a friend of mine that has like some like pull power at this company. And he's like, how's it different than logs? I'm like, like high level abstract, it's kind of the same thing. It's just different kinds of data, right? And he's like, and he has like an ops background. And he's like, will this get the developers on the team, will they fix the bugs with this? I'm like, I mean, it's like, it's kind of up to them. And I think people have this misconception that, like, we developers, we want to know that things are broken.
Yeah.
Like, we might not feel great about them being broken, but we're going to have to deal with it eventually. I'd rather deal with it while I'm, like, working on the project rather than weeks later when I've started on the next thing. And so it's kind of interesting. And I guess, like, we're talking about JavaScript. I think the very interesting thing for me is how long we went as an industry without any kind of instrumentation for JavaScript. Like, it's been really good for us because a lot of our customers, like, we've had a lot of development in JavaScript lately, like Angular and React especially, and Ember before that, right? But forever we've had jQuery and like complex applications in the browser, but nobody's ever really instrumented them. So if like things were breaking, it was literally you're tweeting at somebody like, hey, I don't know, United, your website's broken or something, right? And it's kind of amazing how long we got away with that as an industry. And even today, like a lot of these like really big sort of older organizations that are just now getting started with like rich web applications are still learning this kind of thing. And it's been really interesting for us just to see the massive adoption of like JavaScript and JavaScript with Sentry sort of over the past like 3 years.
Well, I mean, when I was introduced to this idea, it was mostly on the back end, right? We were building Rails apps, and it was really easy to just plug something like this into the back end, and nobody quite knew how to instrument the front end. And so, it's interesting to see how many companies have come around now to figuring this out.
And it's a lot more challenging, I'll say. So, like, we got our start in Python, and that's like where it was born. It's actually really interesting because I would credit the Rails community, at least the Rails open source, like sort of SMB mid-market accessible companies, with really pulling in this error monitoring idea, because it's not new. Like, it's been around for like Windows apps and everything for 30 years or something, right? But it was newer to like web apps because we had logs and they were kind of okay. Whereas like browser apps and like desktop apps, you just don't have logs. There's on some other device. So like we got our start in Python, and there's some stuff in the Rails community as well, in the Ruby community. But even then it was like, well, like we don't necessarily need it. We can still sort of do our job. And, and then JavaScript came around, and it's like, you really need it, but it's actually like much, much harder to do because, you have minified code, you have like transpiled code, even going from like technically not JavaScript to JavaScript. And you need to map all this up so I, as like the developer, actually have some clue of what's going on. And for us, it's been an interesting challenge. Especially with like the different browsers and like everything working differently. I think as an industry, we're in a pretty stable place to be able to collect that instrumentation data. But still, there's surely like a wish list of things you could do, like get rid of extensions, like playing with your website would be a nice thing. I'm sure if anybody that's already doing this has seen this flood of data. But just injecting HTML and JavaScript on your page and
I've had that mess up all kinds of stuff. The browser extensions. So what makes Sentry different from some of the other ones out there that do the same thing?
Yeah, there's sort of a few things. Like I'm like a realist, and I'll tell you they're all sort of the same. Like we classify ourselves as monitoring, and at the end of the day, all monitoring eventually looks the same.
Yeah,
but,
at the core, it collects the error data, right?
It's all kind of the same data. I would say what makes us different, there's a few things. Like first, we're open source. We're actually like truly open source, and I mean that in like the most real way. It's completely free, both the server and the SDKs. We do have a SaaS service, so that's how we make money. So totally open source, have been that way for the entire time. Additionally, I think we're the most compatible with runtime. So we work with every language, any kind of stack, whether it's like Mozilla uses us for Firefox for crash reporting, for example.
Oh, really?
And Spotify uses us in their music apps, and they use it on every platform. So whether it's like your PlayStation or your iPhone or their web app,
oh, wow.
right? And it's truly that like cross-platform nature, and that's like important. Going back to the workflow, which is sort of our core focus, because like you don't want to have 10 different tools, right?
No, heavens no.
Yeah, and I think that even though most people again use us for JavaScript or one of these web languages, that's been like very key. Sort of in addition to that, just because of like we're actually celebrating our 10th anniversary actually in a few days.
Oh, congratulations!
So some of that maturity has led to a lot of these arguably overly complicated features, but they're features that we've known to become like necessary for like larger organizations and stuff. And we've really honed deep on, we call it deep context. So for example, we unfortunately can't do this in JavaScript, but in Python and PHP and sort of Java, we actually will go in and with your stack trace, you normally just have it like the line that caused the bug, and maybe you have source code with that. But we'll actually go in and tell you like the variables, like what they're assigned to, and only in certain languages, of course. We collect a lot of information like that, going back to the debugger concept. I think the other thing is just how we've approached this whole workflow cycle. So we say Sentry's only goal is to tell you the root cause. And I'm sure some people are going to get mad when I use that word, but when I say root cause, I mean the commit that caused the problem. Because like if it's like an outage or something, right? The root cause for me is not the server's running out of memory or something. The root cause is like, what commit do I need to revert or fix?
Yep.
And that's like the most important thing you can tell somebody at the end of the day. And so that's like sort of with our latest launch, that's been like the key, like completion of that picture.
Right.
And we do that for errors today, right? And going forward, we're thinking a lot about how do we do that for other problems. That's that same goal. How do we get to the commit and sort of get it in the hands of the right person at the end of the day? And I think that's other people sort of do some of this stuff, but I don't think it's with the same intention. Like they'll give you bits and pieces of that picture, and we're just like, let's do the whole like lay of the land.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you envision people using a system like Sentry then? So they hook it up to their app, it starts reporting errors, they take all that information, and what should the workflow be from there, in your opinion? Yeah, so when we talk a lot about this, the way I want it to work is you go instrument Sentry, it's hands off. Like today, it's mostly you drop in our SDK using NPM or a CDN, you set the API key, and then it's mostly done from there. Like you don't have to configure anything else. Once that's done, you ship it to production or Canary or whatever. It doesn't matter how your world works. There's an error that's detected. In the best world, and this isn't all the time, again, it depends on your org, we email just the authors, like just or owners is actually what we call it, because it's not just like Git blame. It's not just like you wrote this code or changed this code, so it's your fault. It's like, it might be your fault, but like if it's the API, maybe that's a set of people doing that, right? So we tell the API group that there's a bug, and then you either say, this matters right now, this doesn't matter right now, or this might matter like in a certain situation. That's how you triage it. And what I want that to look like is the smoothest possible process. So I'm like, okay, this matters right now. I'm going to assign it to you. And then that will go through and it will tie into your like traditional workflow. Doesn't matter what that is, but specifically like team services, it'll automatically create that issue when you triage it inside of your project management tool. And for us, realistically, that's to cater towards PMs. Like I, as a developer, don't want to spend a lot of time creating these issues like in multiple places, right? But it'll create it in there. You go through, put up the fix, go through code review, whatever. Mark it as such. So, reference either that work item or that Sentry issue. Tell us you're fixing it, basically. Ship out that update. At this point, we already know that it's supposed to be going out. We'll not even like bother telling you that this error is still going on unless you really want to know. Fix goes live and it's either fixed or it's not. So we'll know that based on does it ever happen again with like this version or future versions. And it sort of completes that triage flow. And it's really intended to just be like,
spend as little time using Sentry as you need to. Like,
Yeah.
it's sort of one of those fortunate situations where we measure product success by like, are you using our product? Like, are you engaging with it? But at the end of the day, if you're not engaging it, that's also sort of equally valuable. Like, if you just get that notification on Slack or whatever, or in your inbox, and you're able to solve the issue from there, that's great. Like, we're happy, right? And so that for us is the workflow, and it's really about tying that entire like application lifecycle together, and then move on to your next goal, right?
That makes sense. So do you guys work with systems other than VSTS?
We do. We work with anything major, I would say. We've got a pretty big community and stuff.
Right. So Trello, Jira.
Yeah. Of course,
GitHub.
the big players, absolutely, with GitHub. Pretty much any like major version control system. Fortunately, there's only a few of them these days.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issue trackers. I'll say we support like the 95% of use cases.
There are a zillion issue trackers.
Notifications.
There are a bunch of companies that do what you do too. So
that's true. There's a zillion of everything at this point. It's the good and the bad of the internet. You got a lot of options, but you also have too many options.
Yeah.
But yeah, we try to integrate with your workflow. We don't try to force something else on you. And it's like really important for us. And I think it kind of resonates in this community as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, JavaScript developers, I find in a lot of cases, they like to do things their own way. So if you can plug in and give me good information,
absolutely.
Save me a few hours here and there.
It's supposed to create more efficiency, not add to your not add more hurdles to your workflow. So
absolutely. So are there new features coming out in Sentry?
So we just we're sort of just officially about to launch what we call Sentry 9. Maybe we should have called it 10 to line up with 10 years. I don't know, but and that's really
skip 9 like Microsoft, right?
We really thought about it. But that's really focused on that owner's concept I was talking about. There's some other stuff in there that's more about organization. So it's like, different people have stages of release, right? Like I mentioned Canary, and a lot of that's like, okay, I want to release this to a subset of my audience, or more of like a test environment or something. And that's really to limit the impact of things, because like I think everybody in this day and age accepts that there's going to be bugs, and it's actually like an okay consequence, right? You just want to limit like the impact of those bugs, and you can do that by limiting the number of people that can be affected. You can do it by responding really quickly to them. And so we have like full support for sort of understanding like which environment it's happening in and narrowing down that scope. We did a lot of work around like how do you work within teams, because at the end of the day, like companies are not about individuals, they're about teams.
That's so true.
So for us, it's like, I say like maybe you caused, like your commit caused this bug, but it's your team at the end of the day that's responsible. Like if you go on vacation next week, it can't wait until you get back potentially to get addressed. So we really hone in on that concept. And those are like the major things we just pushed out the door. We've done a lot of work on things like Electron and React Native recently. We're doing work on like BreakPad and CrashPad, which are more for like native applications. It's sort of an ongoing evolution of like how we work with JavaScript ecosystem components. But those are like the major things. Sort of the rest of the year, we're really focused on, we're actually going to launch a bunch of cool new stuff for sort of like a lot of the key integration partners, but Visual Studio Team Services being one of them. We'll talk about that more in the future. And then we're like starting to think about like, beyond just this error. And that's really like hypotheticals at this point, but it's things like, if there's a lot of errors that sort of smell the same, look the same, act the same, they probably are the same. So something's going on there. My example there is, it doesn't happen as much anymore, but it used to be, it was pretty tough to support Internet Explorer way back in the day. And I actually remember one time we pushed out a change that only broke Internet Explorer. We had no idea because we didn't use it. It took like a week before one of our customers finally said something to us. And Sentry technically has the power to spot that like very, very quickly, and to know that it's a wider spread issue and not just like this individual error or something. So that's really where our focus is going the rest of the year.
Cool. So if people want to get started with Sentry, I guess they can either go sign up for the SaaS or pick up the open source. Yeah,
the best way to learn about it would be go to sentry.io. There's a free trial. Like we're super budget friendly. I would say no matter what you're going to do, whether you want to run it on premise or use a SaaS, set up a trial, play with it a little bit, get started. It's really easy to start sending error data to us. It's a little bit more work once you like want to integrate fully with the release lifecycle, but not too bad. Do that, and then if you get it, like you can kind of make a decision as an organization from there. But our goal is really like be as friendly as possible to developers. It's designed to be like really easy to set up no matter how you run it. It's designed to be very price friendly no matter like what kind of organization you are. yeah, it should we sort of say like it should take you 5 minutes to get going.
Right.
Results may vary, of course, but that's our objective. So
Yep. Sounds good. So one thing that we do as part of the show, just to wrap up, is picks.
Do you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
And so it's just anything that you're into, that you're enjoying, that you like, that makes life better. So, I mean, on the last interview I did, I picked a couple of TV shows. I'm trying to think of what I want to shout out about this time. I will say that the MongoDB socks here at Build.
They're good.
Yeah.
You got to see ours too. Stop by. We're right next to them.
Yeah, I'll come by and get some.
Yeah.
But yeah, socks is swag. That's my pick.
I think that is a great pick. We actually are fully committed to let's stop doing t-shirts because
I've got
no
million
offense
of
to
those.
t-shirts, but yeah, we all have a million of those.
Well, I walked through yesterday and I walked out of there with 4 or 5 t-shirts.
Yeah. Nobody has time to wear them all.
Well, it's funny. I've actually started getting smalls. If I want it, then I'll get it my size.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'll get a small. My 12-year-old loves them.
I think that's becoming the common theme, which is totally fine, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I try to think what is my life anymore, and it's mostly just building this company.
I know how that is.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll say I still spend at least an hour a day writing code. I don't know how my investors feel about this, but I've been very upfront. I'm still gonna stay an engineer forever.
Yeah.
And I'll say this is even though we're a build unrelated, I really really like VS Code.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been an IDE user. I've always used, and I've also never been the terminal hardcore user. So I've always used something like TextMate back in the day, and then I used Sublime, and then VS Code is finally easy to configure. Where every time I get a new computer, I don't have to go through a bunch of docs or something again. And we've actually set it up for Sentry, so we're really big on developer efficiency, and that's sort of my passion. It's why Sentry exists. And we've set it up so we share all the configuration everywhere. And the fact that VS Code has thought about this ahead of time makes life so much easier. And so for me, just doing a little bit of code every day and, unimportant code, that's been really nice. And it's been interesting to see sort of the community evolve around a lot of these productivity things, whether it's VS Code or so GitHub just launched some new APIs for CI integrations and stuff, and sort of that collective of how do we play nice with everything, and this flow of I just want to ship code, I just want to build things.
That's the ethos that I think drives a lot of things.
Yeah.
And well, the other thing is it's good for the companies that the developers work for as well.
For sure.
And I've been preaching the code automation and stuff for a long time because I talk to a lot of companies that are we can't find and hire senior developers.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I first challenge them, do you need a senior developer?
Yeah.
But sometimes they actually do, and sometimes they just can't find that last headcount that they need. And I'm like, well, how much time do you spend doing things like deployment and debugging and, all these other things? And they're like, oh, well, that takes up a significant amount of time. Well, you realize that if you pick up these couple types of tools, Sentry is one of those types of tools, but, something like Sentry, something like CI, something like continuous deployment, something like, and I'm like, so that people don't have to think about this stuff, they can be vaguely aware that when I push this, it's going to get deployed within the next hour.
Yep.
And stuff like that, then they can focus on your solutions and they're not spending half a day every week trying to make production work.
Yeah, I think this is also we'll see where we are from a usability standpoint, but the idea of, the evolution of Docker and everything to Kubernetes, I think Kubernetes is still very, very complex. Is like,
yeah, it is.
Especially if you're early in your career. Like I'm very, I have like 20 years software experience in infrastructure, and I need a giant damn book to set up Kubernetes, right?
Yep.
But the idea of it is like really, really cool, and the portability of that, and the fact that I can just go back to like building things and not worry about the servers or something. It's like, it is definitely like the clear next evolution of like, clouds. So that's pretty cool too. Like, and I have a side project that we run at the company that's part of that. And that was like my experiment. Like, it was like an experiment and my experience of like setting up Kubernetes and running this project on it. And it was like, it was a learning curve for sure, but it was pretty nice. And it was like fun to work with. And to the same degree, like fun to work with once you got it going, as is things like React and whatnot, where it's like I am pleasantly surprised with how nice it is to like build JavaScript apps these days.
Yeah.
It's a drastic difference than, years ago. So, but yeah, I guess those would be like my picks. Sort of just like that entire ecosystem of like change has been really good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I guess the last question is, where do people find you online? Do you blog on Twitter, GitHub?
I do not really have an online presence anymore. I took down my blog. I'm on Twitter, ZEEG, but I mostly just rant about incomprehensible things these days.
I tweet about politics to piss people off.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I tweeted about LaCroix versus Dasani water the other day. I think the Dasani stuff is delicious. LaCroix it's too present. It's got too many bubbles.
Is that the next holy war? Emacs
that might be.
VI?
That might be. I don't know. That's mostly it these days. Like a lot of my interactions, like I try to do more community events with Sentry. Maybe one of these days I'll get back into speaking again.
Yeah.
But mostly like I'm like the face and I live and breathe Sentry at this point. So, but yeah.
Cool. Very cool. Well, I'm just going to encourage people to go check it out. If you don't have some kind of error tracking monitoring thing, or if you're not happy with the one you have, I mean, there's so many good options out there. Just find one that works in your workflow, and it sounds like Sentry's got a lot of the things that you're going to want. So,
cool. Awesome.
Right.
Well, thanks again.
Yeah, we'll wrap this up. Thanks for coming.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.